Think we're live. This is Greg, and I will start at 11 on the dot. And I'm leaning forward to check my clock because what we're doing today is we are going to be covering email newsletters. So looks like I've got Sarah and Spencer. You guys are all checked in. So you guys will be monitoring the chat for me. And then the Q&A is open. If you have questions, chat's probably easiest, but you can use the Q&A, even though I think we've done like 20 of these. I don't know if anybody's ever actually used the Q&A, but that is available to us. But oh, you gotta be kidding. Somehow I don't know why it does that. Pay no attention to the screen. You just watched it in reverse. Let's start with a quote. I don't know if you guys have watched Ted Lasso or if you've seen this on Apple TV, but it's hilarious and it's feel good. And talk about email newsletters. I think a lot of people have the best intentions to get newsletters done, but they just don't get it done. So we're going to talk about doing it. And like Ted says there, if you're comfortable, you're probably doing it wrong. So we will use that as our theme going through the rest of the afternoon. And today what we're going to cover is we're going to talk all about email newsletters. So why would you listen to me talk about email newsletters? Simply because I've sent so many of them and have helped people send many of them. And I'm going to share everything I know. So I think my first email newsletter that was circulated to clients was in the late 90s. So my kids would say, we weren't even around yet. And so, and the last one was just this week. We were putting some emails together. So I'll share everything I know about that. We'll talk about ESP, but not the extrasensory perception, a different kind of ESP. We'll cover how this relates to lead generation. And then I'll jump into the ideas, right? I said I have 6, but it's the holiday season. I'm in a giving mood. So you're going to get a little bit more than that. And then we'll wrap it all up. There'll be time at the end to ask questions. If you need examples that are from your particular industry, by all means, ask for them in the chat box. But you'll see most of these ideas are pretty straightforward. And the first one relates to using an email service provider. For most people, like, why would we use an email service provider? Man, my mouse is messing up this morning. And I'm talking about like MailChimp, Constant Contact, Aweber, any of these service providers. And in general, if you're not using one, you should. And the reason is because, first of all, it's just an easy way to do broadcasting and batch email sending. You can organize it by time so that everybody gets it at 2 in the afternoon, whatever their local time is, for instance, or you just get to plug it in once and send it to your entire list. And you don't bump any weirdness that happens, like if you're trying to send one from your email address. It handles all the bad stuff, unsubscribes, signups, segment, splitting your list into bits and pieces. It'll keep track of all those things for you through their nice little interfaces. I think MailChimp has got a free version, and the other ones might have small paid versions, but it's really not that much when you consider how easy it makes your life. It is useful to use these things. Spam complaints bounces. If you've ever sent, and who knows, maybe everybody uses an ESP these days, but it used to be back in the day, you'd use your email address, right? Or somebody would set up an info at address, and you'd send a newsletter through to your list, and everything would start coming back. It's much easier to deal with if you let them deal with it. Plus, when people sign up, you can set up things like autoresponders, where instead of you having to respond to everybody saying, welcome to the newsletter, it can do it for you. So these are all interesting reasons. The number one reason, though, is because between MailChimp, Constant Contact, Aweber, a few of these companies, they basically like run email these days. And so if you want the highest deliverability, if you want the biggest chance of, the greatest chance of your email actually being seen by the people you're sending it to, you use these tools because they work in partnership with a lot of spam to keep spam off the internet. Stick to their rules and you'll be doing good. So take your entire list. You can bump it into, run it through a service like Never Bounce to make sure there's no bad addresses in there. And then you can start using a tool like MailChimp right away. So that's not any of the ideas. It's just my recommendation if we were going to talk about the easiest way to use a newsletter. Now, using it for lead generation is, there's basically, so those are those would be old-fashioned newsletters, right? Those are sending the news through the mail. The reason that we say that you can use email newsletters for lead generation, or the best way to do it, is simply to adhere to the rule of 30. And if you've been on any of these webinars before, you've heard me say this, and it's there is an old rule, an old marketing rule that is like a company needs 7 exposures. Like if you're trying to get a message through, whatever message it is that you're trying to get through to somebody via advertising, you need to get it in front of them 7 times for them to recognize that they've even seen the message. And in today's day and age, we started using this about 5 years ago, just internally, where we said, yeah, but let's just bump it up to 10 and assume that 1 out of 3 messages never gets through. We think it'll get through, but it doesn't. So we're up to the rule of 30. So you're trying to get in front of people with your message 30 times in order for it to penetrate all the noise that's out there. Newsletters are one of those touches. It's a great way to keep your company name in front of your prospects, in front of your customers, so that you stay top of mind, right? The more you send, the more opportunities you get for people to say things like, hey, I've been getting your newsletters, right? So I'm finally reaching out for an unrelated reason, but I just wanted to let you know I'm getting your newsletters. We get those calls on a regular basis. And then the more and more you stick to this, if you can just stick to it, make it part of your routine where you're in their inbox on a regular basis, you are basically, you're just helping people understand that, remember that you're around, and you're getting past that, like, I should call them, you know, I've been meaning to get in touch with those guys. I've been meaning to call that guy back. There's no better way than a gentle reminder that shows that's you showing up in their email box on a regular basis. So with those things in mind, use an email service provider. And then the way that we generate leads is, in general, by being in their inbox and talking to them. What are some of the best practices that go along with it? I was going to give you, right, I promised you 6 great ideas for email newsletter generation, and it's at least 12 plus newsletter ideas. So maybe it's like 12 plus ideas, and then you decide which ones are great by how you go through them. So I'm just going to run through these, right? So it's the giving season. I'm doubling up, and I went through, brainstormed. These are all the things that I could think of between the time that we invited you and right now. So the first one is repetition, right? The best way to get repetition is to pick a time slot. Even though I say pick a time slot, what I mean by that is if you have a time that your email goes out on a regular basis, it's almost like, I don't know if you remember, like way back in the day when we used to do newspaper advertising, we used to tell this story about the reason you needed to be in the paper every week, you needed to be in the paper in the same spot, was because people got used to seeing you there. And yeah, sure, you needed to do it 365 days a year the first year, but the next year you could do it every 3rd day, and people would just assume that they see you in the same place. Owning a time slot in their inbox is roughly the same thing. If you send emails every Monday at 8 a.m., they expect it Monday at 8 a.m. The only caution there is that there's a lot of people that send emails that's like start the week emails. And so I don't know if it's just what I've subscribed to, or if it's the first thing that occurs to people is, I want to be in their inbox at Monday morning at 8 a.m. I think more important than being, than like, what is the best time? Should it be Sunday night, Greg? Should it be Wednesday? Should it be Friday? When is the right time? The right time is to own a time slot. So pick a time that works for you. I have a newsletter that I've sent for years now, and it comes out Friday at 3:30. And what is it's just the last email you get before you go home for the day. So it's your reminder to go home for the day. That's how it started. And what's happened though is now it's become a compulsion, right? I think I'm up to episode 259 of this. And if I ever miss one, which I missed one, people send you an email back, hey, you missed it. So own a time slot. That's my advice. So that allows you to be consistent. So you can consistently be in their inbox, and then it puts pressure on you. The show goes on, right? So just do it, and occasionally allows you to work ahead. So you can get your email done. If you know that it's going to be going out Friday at 3:30, or the Lead Gen Compass email we do every other Friday. I don't think it goes out at a specific time of day, but at least we know, right? So then the week before I can start collecting articles, because we're going to be sending them in the 2-week time period. So when it comes around, there's a lot less work to be done once you know that there's a deadline that's out there. So that's number one. Number two, try to add value in your newsletter. So what is it that most people get tripped up on? Well, we don't know what we're going to make it about. Just start with putting yourself in their shoes, right? Whatever helps them will be read by them, right? So whatever helps your readers will actually get read. And ultimately, if you don't find it valuable, and if you're going through the motions, they won't find it valuable either, right? So newsletters that are recycled content, or are just, you're grabbing a feed from somebody else and forwarding it on, a lot of times those just go into the waste bin, or they get unsubscribed pretty quickly. But if you're taking articles, again, we use one of these shortcuts for Lead Gen Compass's newsletter, and I'll refer to it as the webinar goes along. If you are we'll find articles that we find interesting, so it's helpful to us, right? It's like an internal email circulation. Everybody should be aware of these ideas that we're bumping into. But then also, here's a couple commentary, right? Here's like an interesting quote and a commentary that goes along with it. So we're going to try to add a little value to it. So it's not just, here's 4 articles, go read them. It's, here's 4 articles, here's the part that we thought was interesting, and then here's a little commentary that relates to how we think. So add value wherever you can. Stats. We get a lot of questions about, like, what is the best open rate, and how should blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. Lead Gen Compass has an open rate of over 25%. Sarah could probably check me on that, but last I looked, I saw a 2, so I'm giving it a 25 plus. Go Leads, though, a newsletter that we've sent for an even longer period of time, Go Leads, the US Farm Data newsletters, those have open rates of about 6%. The number of leads that come from each of those efforts is approximately inverse, maybe even more so. We get a lot more, even though we get a lot more opens on the Lead Gen Compass newsletter, we tend to get more leads from the Go Lead side, where people are like, oh, I've been meaning to call you guys. Or even if we put an offer in the newsletter, they'll call about something else, right? But they call and it generates more business there. So if there's any stat that you do keep track of, is you should probably be adding more people to your list than are unsubscribing over time, right? So if your list starts with 100 and you lose 20, at some point it'd be great if you added 25, right? So you at least maybe are at like 105 by the end of the year. How big are lists, and does it matter? I've worked on lists that are over 100,000, like 110,000, and lists that are in the hundreds of just like 100 people, 150 people, whatever is good for your audience, right? I think I'm more in love with the ones that are small and catered to a specific audience than the broad ones. It's simply because as I go through this, you'll find that it's hard to write content for 110,000 people. It is a lot easier to do content related to your business, at least, for a small group of those, a subset of those. So I ignore most stats. I know that people in our organization are looking at them. I don't think they're that important. The more important thing is that your email is going out, right? How consistent are you getting your email out would be the stat that you might have me ask you about as we go forward. What about Mad Libs? Does anybody remember Mad Libs? Am I dating myself again? Do kids still play with these things? The fill in the blank. If the format you choose for your newsletter helps you get these newsletters out. So for instance, again, the Lead Gen Compass newsletter always has 4 articles, right? So I need to find 4 articles to get it written. It just I'm filling in the blanks, right? These are sales and marketing related news items. And what are the 4 of the things that we've been reading? What are the 4 that are worth sharing? What are the things that actually relate to our audience? Is an easy one to fill out. I've got another email newsletter that it's got a section with, here's 4 ideas, here's a long idea, and then here's a personal story. And having those segments ready to fill out. The Go Leads emails, when you look at those, they follow a certain theme. So one week is maybe links to articles that we've written for our blog. One week is links to articles that are outside of Go Leads. One week is just a reaction to news that's going on, or sharing one article that's in there. Having a format just allows you to get it out so that you can be consistent, and it ends up being picked up on by your readers too. If you do an email newsletter that comes in sections, my section email, it's easy for readers because they can pick out the things that they like the best, right? If they're after little tidbits, they read the tidbit section. If they're after just personal stories, they can do the personal story bit. It makes it easy on you, makes it easy on them, and it doesn't cause a lot of grief in getting some people on your staff to get the newsletter out. Here's another idea for you: recycle content. Existing content can be reused. The idea that there's you could even resend old newsletters, right, after they've been updated, just to make sure that they are updated. But the idea that there's a reader out there that's read it all and remembers it all, the only person who's probably done that is my wife reads one of my newsletters, and she could probably tell you what's going on inside it. But even then, I'm pretty sure I can recycle content on a regular basis, and she won't pick up on it unless it's about her. So, and I rarely write about her. That's not true. It's almost every week that she gets a story in there too. But you can recycle old content. So that takes some of the pressure off. It puts pressure on the first year. You got to get out a bunch of content. But in subsequent years, you can keep your email list fresh, or you can keep your email newsletter consistent by recycling content, revisiting old content. This was an opinion that we had last year. What's our opinion on that same subject this year? Give some continuity to the people who are checking in on your newsletter on a regular basis. How about this one? Mobilize. What do you think I mean by that? Good guess. That's right. Most people that look at your newsletter are going to be looking at it on the phone. You should look at it on the phone too. Obviously, you need to design somewhere, so you can design it for the desktop, but pick a template that's adaptive, that is easily readable inside of the newsletter. I won't hold up my phone, but I get one newsletter that is great. We can actually, this one only comes out once a month. And when he sends it, it's just got the weirdest formatting, and I've got to blow it up, and I've got to kind of shift it back and forth to read the text. It's the worst. And I've sent him notes on it before. He doesn't care. But I live with it because the content's great. You can plan ahead using MailChimp or any of those email service providers. They've got built-in templates. There are templates that will adapt to any size screen and keep the text readable, which is the goal there. Because easy to read actually gets read, right? If it's hard to read, your content needs to be pretty good. You need to be talking to a pretty specific audience for that to happen. So keep your content ready to be adapted to every device, including that little tiny phone. That either she's got giant hands or that is an old phone. Here's a content idea for you. The audience of one. When you're writing a newsletter, or when your people are writing the newsletter, remind them, this is just an old writer's trick, is to talk to one person, right? Right now, there, you can't see it, but there's a little picture of Steve, who's right by the camera. And when I talk to this, I am usually talking to Steve. When I write a newsletter, I'm usually writing for just one person. Everyone else just assume that they're eavesdropping on hopefully an interesting conversation. But by writing for one person, it allows you to do things like to bring in, like if you were eavesdropping on a conversation, there'd be bits of it that you might not understand. It lets you use your lingo that's happening inside your company, inside your industry. But also you can do like, you can write little inside jokes. Again, when you're trying to write for a group of 110,000, oftentimes you have to leave some of that stuff out, which is what makes writing interesting and it makes it readable. But if you are just aiming it at a single person and you happen to be writing about something that's so interesting that 110,000 people subscribed, by all means, you should be doing the next training. But for our groups, we like to write about to little audiences, and the more niche, the better, because it tends to be interesting if people are just peeking in on it every once in a while and aren't waiting for it to be the end all be all to their week. Which, how many newsletters, how many emails do you get? My wife gets hundreds. I don't know that I get hundreds, but I get a lot of emails. So write that. And speaking of giant email lists, cull the herd, right? If you have people on your list that have not opened and have not clicked, should they still stay on the list? We have an internal debate. We have a few people who've, as far as I can tell, they've never engaged. The right way to treat them, right, is to ask them if they even want to be on the list instead of just cluttering their inbox. And the right way to do that is to probably send them a personal text. A personal text email. And I say text email just because it's easy to read in any reader. So if you can just send them an email address, like, I noticed you haven't been opening this. I'm not being a creeper or anything. I just want to make sure that if you're on the list, that you want to remain on the list and that it isn't like automatically being deleted each week. Doing that, the times that I have done it, because I'll admit this may be more advice for myself than advice for you. Every time I've done it, I'm always surprised at the number of people that do say, no, I read it every week. Stats are deceiving. So that's why we going way back up to idea number 2 or 3. Don't get too caught up in stats, because it's really hard to tell with newsletters whether or not, or what percentage of people are actually reading them and if your message is getting through. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I've got an idea down the road that helps with that. This next idea. So this is my, I wish I could build a big fence. And it's not that I don't know how, it's just that I don't have the time. But when you're writing a newsletter, you can, it helps if you have an idea to build something bigger, right? So if you have something that you've always wanted to get out to your clients, or you have some internal knowledge that you're looking to capture, that could be a section of your newsletter. And the outline that you'd work from that, those are, right? This is a reason to get that thing done. If you've always wanted to get a booklet or a book out, start putting it in your newsletter, put the sections in, and force yourself every week to kind of chip away at it. What'll happen is, over the course of a year, over the course of a couple of years, you'll have a ton of content. And when you finally do sit down to get that thing done, you've got all these pieces you can pull from. So you can say, I think I did, we wrote a little bit about this in this chapter, and you can pull it in, and suddenly your giant project, since it's in tiny little pieces, gets done. And even if you end up not using it, so this was an idea I had for a book, and I was going to put all these ideas in, it still ends up being semi-interesting content, right? Because it's things that you're thinking about. It's things that you think that you should be sharing with your target audience. And it's a good way to, to get yourself into the habit of continually chipping away at the newsletter problem, which is, right, how do we make sure that we can stay inside of somebody's email box? This one, this next idea that I have for you is called peakers. And it's all about preview mode. When most emails come through, for especially corporate emails, they look like this. This is from my personal Gmail account, right? But it doesn't have images loaded. So you can see on there that it says that there's no images displayed, but Patagonia has done a great job of, I can still read about what this email is. And they even put a little description there about 2 people wearing baseball caps standing outside with climbing rope around their necks. I know what that image is, right? And I can still get the gist of the message without ever without ever loading messages or images, right? Which sends the signal back to Patagonia that I opened the email. I can see what it is and click. I can actually, visit their bestsellers if I wanted to. Do that with alt tag images. Make sure all your images have alt tags. Take a peek at it to see if it's readable, because if it's readable, even if it looks unread, there's a good chance that it does still get read. And yeah, when the image loads, look at that. It's a pretty accurate description of what it is. Two guys in baseball caps, Patagonia, I'm sure, playing with rope. I don't know if it's Patagonia rope, but that's, and I can get into the rest of the email. Now they know I opened it. And so I'm sure I'll get more email from them before the holidays here, this little holiday push on there. What's the proper length of an email is a question we get all the time. And I'd say, how my standard answer, which is really smart alecky, is how long is a piece of string, right? How long does it need to be? It kind of needs to fit in. For everybody who says that it has to be short, I can give you an example of a well-read, well-circulated, long email. For everybody who says, oh, you need to, really stretch it out and write a lot for people because they want to hear a lot from you, I can give them examples of teeny tiny emails that barely have anything in them that are super effective at, keeping subscribers, adding new subscribers. Oops. Whatever your goal is, right? If the goal is to just make sure to get something out, mix it up is where I stand on it. The most important part of your email when you send it is always going to be who's it from and what the subject line is, right? So let's go back to that Patagonia one where it's customer favorites for the cold is the subject line and it's from Patagonia. So I know who it's from and what's going on with it. That is what you want for your customers, right? If you always have a good from line, by good from line, I mean, it's usually like, I like it for it to be from somebody. So Bill Matern sends all of our emails. He doesn't really, but his name is on it. And a name works better than like Lead Gen Compass, for instance. You can be pretty positive they're going to see who it's from and they're going to see what the subject line is. So you should spend most of your time on your newsletters thinking about those things and then thinking about the preview. And can you accomplish like the goal? And for lead generation, the goal is to stay top of mind, right? So we have value, we're trying to send something of value to you, but really what we want you to see is that it's from Go Leads, it's from US Farm Data. This is what the subject is, which may be of interest to you, but usually between the from and the subject line, we get a call, a lead on that side. Here's another idea, share the crumbs. Every time you make a newsletter, right, you've made little bits and bobs that you can put all over the place on social media. Use tools like if this, then that. Use a buffer is another one of these tools. Hootsuite is another tool. But every time that you create content, you can share it. And we suggest that you do share it because if you're trying to add value to your customers and you're really laser focused in on that, you're writing it to one person. So you're usually that's the better communication is if it's just you talking to them. If all that is happening, that's worth sharing. And you're probably going to attract a few people over time. Back to your newsletters. So one newsletter that I've worked with for years with a client, it consistently, right? We take it, we get it, we break it into pieces, we share it across the web. He puts it out once a month, but then we'll share it all month long. And it is a consistent lead generator, referral generator from his customer base. So that works. If you're looking, this is a content idea. So if you're looking for ideas on content, just take a look at the news. Whatever's happening in the news that you think relates to your business at all, hijack it, right? Take it. News is, in general, people are interested, know what's going on overall. So right now, right, vaccines are in the news. If you've got a take on a way that vaccines relate to your business, it's a good thing to share, right? the weather change. I'm trying to think, just anything that's in the news. If there's a hot headline right now, you can have a take on it, and it is interesting enough that people will read it. And if you have if you have a reader on staff, anybody who's like keeps up on these things, in every company, right? There's somebody who has who takes an active interest in like just reading what's going on and reading other articles and sharing things back and forth. Get them to put them all in one place, right? Ask them to share their links and to maybe give summaries on these things, because it's just newsletter content that's being circulated internally that can probably be turned out pretty easily. So if you need content ideas, just take a look at what's happening in the news. Every news cycle goes up and down, right? If you catch it on the way up, sometimes it can become hot and viral, but even if you catch it on the way down, it's at least a topic where you're trying to keep yourself, where you're keeping your subjects relevant, and it's a good exercise for whoever your writer is. That reader bit got me thinking about the recipe box. So that is, I wish that's what my canning bit looked like. My cellar does not look anything like that, but it does have tomatoes and peaches. There's probably a set number of topics. If you picked a set number of topics that you think are of interest to you and your clients that you were going to write about or share articles about, start collecting them, right? So use Google Alerts to collect them. Kind of like an old recipe box is what I was thinking is, every time you see a good recipe that you may use someday, throw it into the recipe box, because at some point you can go through the recipe box and use it again. The trick on those is whatever you put into, like, I may use this someday, obviously, like a root cellar, right? Put everything in the same place so you can find it. But when you put it in there, especially if it's content related, don't just copy it. Like, don't just put the link in. Remind yourself what you thought was interesting about it, and maybe even write a quick summary. Because what ends up happening is things that sit there for a while that you have summarized, when you re-summarize them again, when you summarize your own summaries, the content tends to be a little more interesting, a little more from you, as opposed to just something that you're recycling from some other writer somewhere else. And then this is the kind of thing where you can get everyone involved. Like, once you know what topics are that you cover, by all means, you can remind everybody to, when you see articles about any of these things, please send them to me, but don't just copy, right? Summarize and get it over, and we'll stick them in these places, and then eventually they'll make it into the newsletter. Is a great way to generate new content. Here's something that I want to do more of in 2021. So if you're on this, you may be called up. I think that interviews are wonderful for like inside of industry interviews. They're great for content, but they're also good for attracting new people, because if there's somebody in your company that you are talking to, or if there's a customer that you're talking to, whoever knows that customer is probably going to be open to watching that interview and getting introduced to you. Plus, the content writes itself, right? So you get it transcribed, it's sitting there, and so it's a fast way to generate content. You can pull out quotes, little bits. So get people online, get the calls recorded, and ask them questions about your business. If you have industry luminaries, they love to talk about, right? Anybody who's written a book about anything that's in your industry, they probably love to talk about what's going on in their lives. So use guests. And Sarah Spencer, we're going to do more of that someday. Whew. So how's that? So I've been roaring through this like I do, right? I was teasing one of our new guys, Nate, this morning. I was teasing him that I've just been sitting in the basement sucking down coffee all morning, and the van down by the river, I can't remember what they Foley. Anyways, that's how I feel. But I ripped through the big 12, right? There was at least 12 or more. So repeat, like a consistency. I probably might have chosen the wrong title there, but pick a time and be on that time all the time is good advice. Add value wherever you can. Don't pay attention to stats. the way you format your newsletter is oftentimes a shortcut for how you can write it. Recycle whatever you put out there. You can recycle. Think of your mobile phone user first, because that's where most people are probably going to read it if you're looking to be readable. Write to an audience of one. Tell your person to write to an audience of one. If the content just sounds better. Don't be afraid to cull the herd. If there's people on there that aren't engaging, ask them. And maybe that is a point of engagement and a point of lead generation. Build something bigger, right? So if you have an idea of something that you'd love to put together, like the definitive guide to whatever is in your industry, you can start with the newsletter to build that bit by building it by bits. Consider the peakers, right? The people who are just going to be looking at the who's it from, the subject line, and then they're going to look at the email without loading images or anything. Does it have good enough content for them, designed for them too? Is it better for it to be short or long? It's better for it to be out, right? Is it better for you to be good or to be there? It's always better to be there. So get something done, make it fit for what your industry is. And the way, if you have to write giant long pieces to be consistent, I'm all for it. If you have to write short pieces to be consistent, I'm all for it. The consistency part is the big piece. Spread your crumbs around, right? As you make these bits of content, reuse them, right? It's back to that recycle bit. Start moving them around, right? Get them out into bits where you can use them in different places like social media or some other place where your audience is congregating. Hijack headlines for content. Store all sorts of ideas for the topics that you want to write about in some place where they can always be found, but remember to summarize, and then bring in guests. So that's, how many ideas is that? I don't know. It's a lot, but what are you going to do? Right. So Greg, thank you for yakking at me for a half hour and throwing all these ideas at me. Of those, there's got to be 6 good ones, right? What do you do next if you're me or if I'm you? I am making sure that you're set up on an email service provider, and then pick a format. If you don't have an email newsletter, or if you haven't sent one in a while, now's the time, right? 2021 is coming up. So let's start the new year off right, and with a weekly newsletter. The one I told you that's like episode 259, that started like the 3rd week in January. It was like, I'm doing it. And once you get started, there's a few, all it takes is a few times to miss it for it to fall apart. So if you just keep making it happen, eventually it gets better. And I did have a guy say, so I will share this with you. It was like number 249. And he sent me a note and he's like, this is a really good newsletter. And he actually wrote this. It only took you 250 tries. I mean, I don't know whether he was saying that admiringly or insultingly, because he's kind of a picky guy. But, start somewhere and get to where you're going. Pick a time, own that time, and then let's just start, right? That's the way to get your newsletter stuff done. If you have questions, I don't see any questions in the chat, but these are my Christmas question marks. If you have them, or if there's anything that you're wondering about, by all means, throw it in there. But I'll tell you about Lead Gen Compass, what it is that we do and what we can do. Part of our content strategy is email newsletters for clients that are, at the higher levels of engagement with us. We can, if nothing else, you can outsource a newsletter to us. We work with you on all those same things that I just talked about, and come up with the concept for you and help you get it out. And if you wanted to build something bigger, like an artifact project, a booklet, webinars, webinars are great content to share. We can help you with those things too. And that's really the way it goes. So this was not 6, right? It ended up being 15. I did count this morning. It was 15 great ideas for email newsletter lead generation. And I hope that's been helpful to you. Thank you. Thanks to Sarah and Spencer for manning the ship for us, and happy holidays. We'll see you in 2021, where we'll do another group of at least 8, as many as 12 webinars for you next year.